The man has more integrity than any single individual I've ever known.
What it was like to work in that office was all about integrity.
And a humanity about him that made those of us who worked for him admire him and respect his policies that were aimed at good government for California.
I was on a shuttle bus to the convention center and got on the bus, and I noticed this couple a few rows ahead of me, and wow, it was the Duke.
I first met Governor Deukmejian about 40 years ago.
He gave me an opportunity to work on his senior staff in the late 80s.
So we went to lunch, and I knew right away this was a different kind of guy. First of all, he's a candidate. He didn't ask me for money.
My first day on the job was the day I graduated from college. I went to work on the campaign.
Third, he didn't denigrate his opponent.
My opportunity to start as an intern, an unpaid intern, I will mention, but then a paid intern.
All he wanted to talk about was the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office, how it operated, how could it be better, how could it better reflect the public interest.
Governor Deukmejian ran in 1982, both in a primary and in a general election.
It turned out to be about a 2-hour lunch, and then to top it off, he picked up the tab.
Well, I think the fondest memory is election night 1982.
People would often say to us, well, it's great you're working for him, but he's not going to win.
All of a sudden, the absentee ballots started coming in.
And it took 2 days to win.
He should have been a priest because he wanted to do the right thing always. And he concluded that he's going to lead the fight to divest the University of California from having investments in South Africa, and he called the regents. He told them what he was going to do. They didn't like it. He called the president of the University of California, told them what he was going to do. He didn't like it. He went to the board meeting, and he convinced the Board of Regents to divest in South Africa.
Governor Deukmejian, during his tenure, was a tremendous champion for higher education.
The university is one of the great strengths of California, and it was just being drained of its resources. Its then president, Dave Gardner, asked me to get a meeting with the governor, and he made his case to the governor. The governor was skeptical originally, but he ended up enhancing the budget of the University of California by 1/3.
He authorized more spending to deal with AIDS.
There were also times when he reached across the aisle and he would talk to people at the most critical times.
He had strong views, but he also knew that other elected officials, including of the other party, had strong views.
He and Gloria have lived in the same neighborhood, in the same house for almost 60 years.
The fact that he was the second generation and came from immigrant parents, I think really gave him a humility and an ability to connect with people.
He became a role model for young Armenians, both men and women. He was one of the very first Armenian Americans elected into public service.
The ban on assault weapons, we had to take on a pretty big constituent for the Republican Party, the NRA, but he thought it was the right thing to do.
Many of us feel very special on the bench to be a Deukmejian appointee. His staff were men and women and people of color who all came together and shared ideas, literally around a table every day.
He invented something called the Big Five, which was a way to make broad public policy decisions, particularly as it relates to the budget, in a bipartisan way. But one of the most important things that the governor does is appoint judges. He appointed over 1,000 qualified, well-qualified men and women to the courts.
Practical, smart, balanced people. And as a result, he ended up filling the bench with people who cared deeply and who brought the same values he had about serving California.
One of government's most important functions is to protect the people.
Coro knows that in order to lead, we have to reflect the public we serve, and he knew that 30 years ago.
What Coro does is gets young people involved in government, in public service, and gives them opportunities, but also helps to give them the guidance to succeed.
You can certainly do no worse than looking at George Deukmejian's career and following those guidelines of integrity and steadfastness.
Honesty, directness, diversity at a time when that wasn't even a word, really.
And leadership and consistency.
He epitomizes what I would say the profile of a Coro leader, because so much of how he led California in his 30 years in public service really reflects the highest ideals.
Coro is a wonderful institution, and I think it's fitting that they're honoring a wonderful man. A remarkable man.